I'm Bruce Bolger. I'm founder of the Enterprise Engagement Alliance, which runs a regular YouTube show program featuring experts on all areas of engagement. Because in management, to be a chief engagement officer in any part of business, you have to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. So we're here today to talk about customer experience essentials, to provide viewers with what they need to know to evaluate the key issues of customer experience, so that when you seek out an expert like any of these folks or others, you know the right questions to ask and the right framework upon which to evaluate your decision. So we have Barbara Porter, who's become somewhat of a regular on our programs because she offers such insight. She's managing director of Ernst & Young, and she focuses very heavily on customer experience and has had her own call center business, which she sold, and has had a career helping companies with customer experience. Rick Garlick, he's vice president of Magid, and he's also chief research advisor for the Incentive Research Foundation. And he had a long career also with Gallup. So he comes with him real front lines experience about the difficult decisions that companies have to make when balancing customer experience with the ROI. And finally, Alex Mead, he's executive director of customer experience for a digital startup at Stealth right now. Right now, he's based in the Middle East, and he has a C-suite role in becoming and helping that organization become the premier digital provider of digital customer experiences in the Middle East. So we have people that are really at the front lines of this. So I'm going to stop the share now, other than to quickly thank the sponsors who contribute to the Enterprise Engagement Alliance efforts to educate the world on a strategic and systematic approach to people across the enterprise. So to stop that share now, I'm going to get right into it with Barbara, because she's the least likely perhaps to get steamed up about this. I'm kidding. But Barbara, where are we right now in the I should say customer service quality? I would argue that customer experience in the United States is sort of like total quality management in the 1980s. We're talking a lot about it. It's a big issue, but the results aren't very good. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. And, we're seeing all the statistics come out around, employee engagement, which is a critical component of customer experience and, customer service, as well as, stagnating customer service, customer satisfaction. And, where customer experience as a field today, I would say it's evolving, from a very process-driven transactional function to becoming a strategy, a customer experience, using it as a strategy to deliver on the brand promise. And so, I think when you talk about, the state of customer experience, we have a lot of improving to do. And you would think with all the investments that companies have made around that whole ecosystem, that we would be much farther along. But, when you look at the key components, employee engagement is not improving. Customer engagement and customer service is declining, if not just maintaining. And it's really a challenge today for executives to understand. Look, we've made all these investments, but it's not improving. So, what's missing?
Rick, would you agree with her? And if so, why are we overlooking such an obvious area of potential improvement?
Well, thank you. I'm very passionate about this topic, and I can tell you that I've been in the customer experience area for 20 years, over 20 years. And I remember back in the day, I had clients saying to me, okay, our target for customer experience this year is X. What should it be for next year? Come up with a number and tell me what our target should be. And I always think, Bruce, of customer experience scores and employee engagement scores as being like your blood pressure. We don't necessarily want our blood pressure to rise or fall. We want it to be the right number for the brand experience. And I can tell you a very quick story that I worked with a restaurant chain many years ago where the head of the restaurant chain had been a president for 20 years. he was getting very, very tired of ending up in second place to his competitor on customer satisfaction scores that were produced by a syndicated company. So he made the bold decision to reduce the number of table assignments per server from 4 to 3. So you got more attention, quicker service, all these things. Next quarter, he got the best customer satisfaction scores he had ever gotten. He was #1, and he was immediately fired for costing the company so much money. And I think the moral of the story is that we have to balance the investment that we make in a customer experience with the return that we get. And that's, I think, something that we don't think about. I talk about a big box retailer that my son worked for until recently. And he told me that the managers were actually incented to understaff the store, and that yet they still made $100,000 a day despite providing one of the worst customer experiences possible. So you have to think about what are the things that you can do that don't cost anything, that can give you a competitive edge, and how does that align itself with the brand experience? And perhaps we can talk about that in a little bit.
Well, I think that's a great question actually for Alex, because I think, Alex, you're going to agree with Barbara and Rick that that customer experience probably statistically has not improved at all. According to the American Customer Satisfaction Association in the US, it hasn't improved in 20 years. So if you agree with that, Alex, why do you think it is not? What's missing? You talk about CX, there's a huge community about CX on LinkedIn, and yet what's missing? Alex, you're muted. There he is.
Apologies. Well, that's a good start. So yeah, that's a bad customer service experience straight away. So for me, this whole phrase customer experience has messed things up so much. I remember early 2000s, I was a customer service director. We had a marketing director, a sales director, an operations and fulfillment director. My role as customer service director was make sure every customer that has a question, an interaction, a need, across every channel for everything, sales, service, support, make sure they get the great customer service experience. And the sales guy would bring leads to the door, the marketing guys would get people to start, and I would be the guy that serviced them. So that was clear. And then customer experience came along, and we have people now preaching customer experience that don't have a clue that it's not good to sit in a call center queue for half an hour when you don't even want to be phoning. They don't have a clue. Okay, my parcel said it's going to be delivered today. It's not here. There's no possible way I can ask anyone without hours of pain and torment where it is, what they can do about it. And I think people have just completely forgotten what the most important aspect for my customer experience and most customers' experiences is their service interaction. When things work perfectly, great. You don't actually think of it as great. You just appreciate it. You don't even think about it. It's great. But when they go wrong, that's where it's so bad. And I think it was bad before the pandemic. I can't think of a single interaction of the hundreds I've had where I've gone, that was all right. There's always pain in everything. So it's not improving because people have just fallen into this snake, I call it snake oil customer experience. There are so many influencers and keynote speakers, and I look at their background, you've never delivered a thing in your life. So it's, to me, it's disappeared into its own backside. That's my reason.
Well, Alex, it's very similar, and I'm older than all of you here. And I saw it as a very young man. Total quality management was the same thing in the 80s. Quality circles, this and that, and quality was horrible. And it didn't change until the CEO got involved and really said, I got to change this. And then when the big suppliers said to other companies, if you don't do this, I'm not doing business with you. So Barbara, what are we missing? Are there economics? Are there metrics that companies are not able to use to see how, when they are torturing someone who's already tortured, because many people may not expect a great customer experience in store, Rick, but when they have a problem, they want it solved. Why are we not getting metrics that tell us how much it's costing us, Barbara? Are the CEOs driving with one eye on the road, as some people are liking to say?
Yeah, many times they are, because what they're looking at is metrics of productivity instead of outcomes. And so, in customer experience, we really want to look at the outcomes of the interaction. So, as Alex shared, think about when you're interacting with a customer service agent. As a customer, we don't really care about the productivity of that agent. we care about the experience that we had in terms of the outcome. So when I interacted with that agent, were they able to take care of the issue I had in that initial interaction? So I wasn't transferred, I wasn't put on hold, the interaction was answered quickly. So I think, it's making sure that you're looking at outcome-based metrics. So, Alex made a great point. Today customers want to interact digitally because it's quick, right? It's convenient to them. And many organizations aren't providing that channel as a seamless option to actually resolve your issue, answer questions, or even buy more products.
You can't even email most companies, and they can't email you back, which is how most people communicate.
Yeah.
Rick, and we're going to get back to this because at the end of the day, it's all about the bottom line. And to solve CX, I think we have to actually address the economics issue, because you can't, if you don't have good metrics, you're not going to make good decisions. Rick, and I want to get to your point about, you don't need to sell a Cadillac in a Chevrolet market.
Mhm.
So we're all going to concede that the actual customer experience at a retail can be calibrated to the market. But doesn't that all go away when there's a problem?
Absolutely. And I just want to speak to that because one of the things that our company does a lot of, we look at this value friction model where we look at the value you create by the friction that you take away. And I think that there are certain things that they don't cost you anything, or they cost you minimal and bring you a great return. So to Barbara's point, she had talked about employee experience, talked about call centers. How many times do we call a call center and we feel like they're rushing us off the phone? Because why? They're being incented for the amount of calls they take per hour. So I've actually had the experience of calling up a call center, having the representative say to me, "Sir, I'm only allowed to be on the phone for an average of 7 minutes. I've exceeded that. I've got to hang up now." And I actually got hung up on. But people will always reinforce the behavior or replicate the behavior for which they're rewarded or reinforced. So companies I've worked with, we've gone to a first call resolution goal, that how many calls are resolved in the first contact, regardless of how long it takes. It's better than having either a dissatisfied customer or the person calling back. We also talk about giving people the empowerment to resolve an issue on the first contact. How many times have we had the experience of calling someone or talking to someone in the store or bringing a concern up and having them say, after they've listened to us for 5 minutes, "I can't help you, let me connect you with someone who can." And then we've got to go through the whole thing again, and how frustrating that is. At Hampton Inn, they had a policy years ago, and I imagine it's probably still in place, where they would empower housekeepers to refund money to a guest if they were the first person that guest talked to in the course of a complaint or a concern. So the more people you can take out of it, the more you can empower people to resolve complaints on the first contact, the better you are. Again, there's an equation for that where you can prove that that's actually more profitable than having to make customers talk to multiple people and get transferred and do all the things we hate.
So Alex, giving you a heads up, seeing you're muted here. Thank you. I want to get to this economics issue, and we will get to that advice that you would give to a CEO back again when you're seated in first class next to her, and she says, "Okay, Barbara, what do you do? I've been thinking about that. What do I need to know in a nutshell?" But Alex, the economics of this. We're being tortured every day by huge companies. I can't tell you, I dread customer service calls. What economics and I can share some, but I want to hear it from you, are companies not tracking that are enabling them to continue making what is apparently a very short-sighted decision?
I have a very clear view on this, and it's very different to pretty much every company I interact with, and it follows on from Barbara and Rick's thread. So I don't want to measure a single customer service agent on calls answered or emails responded or chat or whatever. I want a culture where somebody phones me and says, "Hey, Alex, my parcel hasn't arrived yet. Can you find out where it is?" "Sure, okay, leave it with me. I'll phone you back in half an hour." And that agent then chases the delivery company on the customer's behalf. They own the customer's resolution. They don't take a call, half answer it, pass it on to someone else, and then force the customer to call back the next day because nothing's happened. They literally own resolutions. They don't own contacts. It's a completely different world to where we are now, and make it even simpler that, okay, maybe I don't want to phone you. Maybe I just want to send you a WhatsApp message. Hey dudes, the parcel I'm supposed to be getting today isn't here. They should know which parcel I'm getting. They should not make me go through torturous IVRs or systems to enter my order number. Okay, Alex, leave it with us. We'll get back to you. We don't have an update yet, so we'll keep an eye on the courier tomorrow. We'll follow up, and if it's not there by tomorrow afternoon, we appreciate this is for a special occasion, so we have a contingency plan. We'll order you another one. It's such a different way of thinking, but what is crazy, if any statisticians, numerists work through, you're actually going to be more efficient working with the customers that way. There's going to be less call after call after call, half answering things. You're going to own it. You're going to resolve it. Your employees are going to have such better lives. What a great job I have. I'm dealing with real customer issues. And that's how it used to be, actually, a long time ago. And finally, your customers are going to buy more and be loyal. Hey, when I spoke to that company, parcel went missing. They owned it. I didn't have to tear my hair out, sitting in queues with DHL, UPS, all the FedExes of the world who tell me they don't know where my bloody parcel is either. So, it's just such a completely different way of thinking. And I'm not hearing that from anyone, which we need to get to, I think.
Well, that's going to be a headline right there, Alex. That is really empowering an employee to solve the problem without torturing the customer by exposing the sinew of the internal operation that no one wants to see. Just solve my problem. Barbara, though, I want to get back to this economic issue, and I'm going to give Alex, you again, a chance, because we really have to answer this. Because, what's so frustrating on LinkedIn, we already know how to solve the customer service problem. And we just heard a great idea here from Alex, and I'm sure Barbara and Rick you could solve the problem, and you could come up with a plan in a day, and within 3 months, solve the problem for many, many companies. I believe all three of you can do that. But the company would actually make money doing it. But Barbara, getting back to the economics, are there measures and gauges that you can show companies, or that you recommend they use as metrics, as to why they have to make solving their bad customer service a top priority because they're going to make more money?
Yeah, I mean, the metrics, and I want to, before we talk about the metrics, I just want to reinforce something that Alex said around culture. Because for CEOs, I mean, building an intentional culture that aligns your, employees, your customers, your vendors, your community, all your stakeholders, is critical. Because without an intentional culture and the right metrics and KPIs to track, how I'm contributing as an employee to that goal, you're not going to be able to break down the silos that exist today across an organization. So to me, making sure that the CEO understands how important their leadership behaviors are in driving and creating an intentional culture that aligns to the business outcomes. And, the metrics, I mean, we have seen that when employee engagement increases, and you can measure that through your productivity from employees. So in terms of their, if it's a customer service, it could be the number of engaged customer interactions they have, the number, their conversion rate of offering new products and services on service interactions. You look at their attendance, the productivity. On the customer side, you're going to see, increased products and services per customer. So, there are core productivity and value metrics that drive revenue and customer lifetime value. So looking at the customer, not just as a short-term transaction, but looking at the lifetime value of that experience and of the customer interactions. So I think some of the biggest challenges around the economics is that we make short-term decisions and we expect that those short-term decisions are going to drive long-term sustainability, and it just doesn't work.
That is exactly it. Boy, this is fun. Because that's the only explanation, Rick, isn't it? For the high tolerance of poor service, because in the hospitality industry, they can really track loyalty. It's really easy to track loyalty. They can see what happens with Alex. He's spending a lot of money. But for a smaller retailer, a smaller, or a startup, they can't, or even Verizon. I hate to single them out, but I'm sorry, their customer service is generally not good. And they're willing to tolerate it because they've made that short-term decision, Rick, isn't it? In other words,
Yeah.
they're looking at it, the Walmart store is looking at it from the next 3 months, not the next 3 years.
Well, that's exactly right. And publicly traded companies are focused on that quarterly earnings. But, I want to get back and really reinforce a point that Barbara made about the whole notion of service culture, what it is and what it looks like. And this is even ties into something that Alex said. The whole notion of, am I being reinforced and incented for providing good service? Deming once said that if you put a good person in a bad system, the bad system wins every time. And it's true that, you can put a highly motivated person in, but, if they're being reinforced for, observing company and strictly adhering to company policies that are not customer friendly, if they're not being rewarded for customer service, if customer service is not treated like a priority, they're going to replicate the behaviors for which they're reinforced and are accepted and celebrated in the culture, which might be saving money in the short term and really looking at that penny wise, pound foolish perspective. And I think a great example of a company that does it really well is Enterprise Rent-A-Car. That when you rent from Enterprise Rent-A-Car, by the time you leave the lot, you'll be asked 2 or 3 times by different people, how is the customer service today? People at Enterprise Rent-A-Car do not get promoted or rewarded unless they achieve a certain customer satisfaction score. Now you can contrast that with other car rental agencies who are reinforced and rewarded for other things, and you get a totally different experience. And that's why Enterprise generally does extremely well in the J.D. Power rankings for customer satisfaction, and why they continue to be extremely profitable as an organization. I think that that's sort of what my colleagues on the panel, I believe, are saying, and I'd really like to reinforce that point.
Well, and boy, this is going fast. There's so much to cover. But I'm going to ask you three, a very quick question, and then I'm going to ask you one other question. This is the quick one. I would argue that the new focus on human capital management that's occurring as a result of the Securities and Exchange Commission requirements now in the US that companies report on people, the Business Roundtable new charter that focuses on the needs of all stakeholders, the new stakeholder capitalism metrics that are coming out of the World Economic Forum. Your company, Barbara, EY, is a major leader in stakeholder capitalism and a terrific supporter of it. And so are some of your McKinsey. I honestly think, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, that more focus is going now on addressing the EX issues, the employee engagement issues, than are being addressed to really solve our customer experience issues. Am I right or wrong? Quick answers, and then because I have one more question for each of you. Barbara?
Yeah, I think there needs to be that focus on employee engagement and experience, because that's a leading indicator for customer experience. So, the environment we create for employees is the environment our customers will experience. So we have to start with aligning, the employee experience to the brand promise that we're supposed to deliver.
But my question is, I don't see as much buzz about the focus on the customer experience as I do now on the employee experience. I agree totally with what you said, but if I follow all the buzz, I don't see, the SEC isn't requiring companies to disclose information on how they treat customers. The human capital standards that have come out of ISO don't even mention customers. Have we ironically left customers out of human capital? Are we not focusing on customer engagement? And again, if you don't agree, we can just move on to Rick and Alex.
No, I don't think they're leaving it out. It's because if you empower your employees, they'll take care of that customer experience. If you align it to, your brand and the brand expectations and the brand promise. So to me, I think the focus is in the right place. let's start with our employees, and trust them, right, to deliver that experience and provide the right metrics and incentives to incent behavior that drives your defined customer experience.
Well, since I think my question's a little bit off anyway, I want to move in the interest of time, because I think Barbie made a great point. Rick, you're sitting next to CEO of a woman who's, CEO of a company, and says to you, Rick, what do you do? And you say, customer experience. Says, I got real issues here. I've got 20 things on my plate. Rick, what do I need to know to really profit from addressing my customer experience issue? Remember, CEOs always want it in an elevator pitch. They're not patient.
And I can do that. I think that the biggest problem that CEOs face today is that they don't look at the whole issue holistically. So for example, sometimes customer experience is housed by quality assurance people, HR houses employee experience, and brand strategy is housed over here in marketing. And they don't speak to each other. The customer experience, the employee experience need to align themselves with the brand promise and the brand values. So you have to think about it. Fairmont Hotels is a company I used to deal with. They had a tagline that said, making moments into memories, turning moments into memories. And so they talked to me about, how do we create an employee incentive program that turns our employees' moments into memories? And they were looking for, as many companies are, that alignment between the brand promise and strategy, the employee experience, and the customer experience. When you look at them in silos and you don't marry them, then you come up with this sort of disjointed machine that doesn't speak to itself and its different component parts.
Alex, your elevator explanation to that very busy executive who asked you your advice.
I missed out on an answer to the other question, so I'll try and merge two answers into one. So, and this is a real story. So I worked for a company where they provided machine hire equipment across the globe, tens of thousands of small bits, big truck size things. And they said, hey, our customer change from last year to this year was 2%, because they looked at their overall customer numbers. And I said to the CEO, actually, we lost 42% of our customers last year. We acquired 40%. 42% left. The vast majority left because we were late to deliver their equipment. It broke down. It wasn't what they wanted. Their invoices were wrong. So that 40%, if we focus on those issues, I can get that to less than 10%. Tell me more, Alex. So that was, and we actually then put in NPS, but not NPS, would you recommend us to a friend? Because it would have said, who knows, you're all as bad as each other. We put in NPS to say, based on the equipment you hired, how happy were you with our delivery experience, your machine instructions experience, your invoicing experience, all the things we knew were issues. And if one customer said, I wouldn't recommend you to a friend because your machine was late or your invoice was wrong, we had to stamp on that straight away. And that turned that 42% loss to something like less than 8% 2 years later. So you've got to, it is all about the customer service experience, this customer experience stuff. But the thing that drives me more insane is too many people think customer service, that's the department that deal with complaints. No, the customer service experience is every question I have about anything. So I want to buy, I want to inquire, I want to support. That's customer service experience. So that to me is the holy grail that, as you say, nobody talks about. And so the second point I wanted to add, a couple of things my colleagues on the call slightly concern me, the brand experience. No. The brand experience should start with what customers want. And too many times I've had marketing and CMOs, hey, here's our brand promise. And here's another example. I'll try and keep it brief. I worked for a logistics company that delivered over 500,000 parcels a day. And we will deliver your parcel safely. Well, they expect that. But we get calls every day to say your parcel's late. The driver pretended to deliver, didn't come to my address. So we came up with a strategy, right? We will give you the ability to know when your parcel is coming. You can track their delivery in real time. And if we don't meet our promise, we'll make it easy for you to tell us what to do. And we became the first delivery company in Europe to send an SMS to say your driver will be there between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. The stuff we take for granted now. And that became our go-to-market brand promise, right? We will be the only company you can trust to deliver when we say we're going to deliver. And if we don't, we'll be open and transparent about it. and make it easy for you to do something else, you know? So too often you start with brand promises that are just marketing baloney.
Authenticity is critical. Well, Barbara, you get to have the last word here. And Alex, I do want to say that I think he's brought, Barbara, the notion of, you know, we talked about looking short-sightedly at your economics. Well, this whole notion of we're all happy. Okay, if our sales go up 7%, well, that's good. That's what we projected. But wait a minute, you lost 25%. What if you reduce that? Isn't that a fundamental economic that a lot of companies overlook? They
Yeah,
hit
it
their
is.
numbers, but
Yeah,
what did
Yep.
they lose?
yeah, it definitely is. And I think it's, Alex made a great point about, you know, looking at, you know, the existing customers that you have. If you're just looking at your, you know, top line numbers of, you know, the amount of revenue, what you're missing is, you know, the leakage that can happen when you lose customers and gain customers, right? So if you are losing customers and gaining new ones just as quickly, you know, you miss the element of, you know, what is going wrong in that whole experience. And so you have a false sense of security, thinking that your business is growing or, you know, maintaining, when actually you're losing customers, you know, out the back door.
And the company isn't even measuring it. So,
Right.
folks, we could talk all day on this, but we've really left with some really great ideas, which I'm going to summarize. And then, of course, we will be publishing this on YouTube, and we always put a summary on footer so people can find you. Your email addresses will be there. So essentially, the key takeaways that I've gotten from this is that CX is customer experience is not living up to the talk. It's probably around where total quality management was in the 1980s. The answer is probably because CEOs have a short-term approach. They're just looking at their short-term costs. Yes, it's important to balance the levels of that. You do not have to have a Ritz-Carlton experience in a big box store, but the point of differentiation is when there's a problem. And that the real approach to solving this is to build it into your culture, to have it to literally led by the CEO, by all management, where we have an intentional culture of customer service. And then, as Alex beautifully explained, we empower individuals to almost to be a project manager and define customer service, not just as solving a problem, but perhaps informing people about new ways they can benefit from the company, a training program that they could take advantage of. So look at customer service as a profit center. And finally, we really have to look at the financial metrics here. We can't be satisfied if our sales went up 10%. That's not enough. We really did ours. How much did we lose to get that 10%? And what can we do to keep that? And to have such basic metrics as, how about my knowing on the top of my tongue, what are my revenues per customer? What are my costs per customer? What's my turnover per customer? What's their willingness to recommend? And then to compare that with my employees. What are my productivity costs with my employees and their willingness to recommend, et cetera, et cetera. So if we run our companies with metrics, we'll have both eyes on the road, and maybe we'll have better customer experiences for all Americans, which, by the way, I would think we'd all agree, bad customer service is one of the major sources of aggravations in our daily lives, that and teenage kids. Anyway, thank you so much for joining this program today and helping us out. Speakers Barbara Porter of Ernst & Young or EY, Rick Garlick of Magan and the Incentive Research Foundation, and Alex Mead, who is, follow him on LinkedIn, and you're going to have a lot of fun. And he, again, is with a startup, and he can't tell us the name of that company. Thanks again.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you so much.
That was fun. Thank you.